Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and today we are about to take you on a journey that might just make you rethink every single coin sitting in your drawer, your car, your couch cushions, and yes, even that dusty old jar on your grandfather's shelf, because what if I told you that one tiny, humble, seemingly worthless penny, a coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, is secretly worth $25 million? That's right, not 100, not 1,000, not even 100,000. We are talking about $25 million hiding inside a coin that was minted in 1996, a year so recent that most of you watching this right now were already alive when it was made. And the most terrifying, the most mind-blowing, the most absolutely jaw-dropping part of all this, is that this coin, this 1996 Lincoln penny worth a staggering $25 million, could be sitting right now in your home, in your wallet, in your pocket, and you wouldn't even know it. So before you go anywhere, before you even think about clicking away, I need you to stay with us today, because we have 6 more coins coming after this one, and trust me when I say this, each one is more shocking than the last. We're talking about coins from years you'll recognize, years you lived through, coins that look completely ordinary but carry secrets worth tens of millions, and by the end of this video, you will never look at a penny the same way again. But first, let's talk about this 1996 Lincoln penny and why it is one of the most extraordinary, most sought after, most passionately hunted coins in all of American numismatic history. To understand why this penny is worth $25 million, you have to go back to 1996 and understand what was happening at the United States Mint during that era, because the 1990s were a period of enormous transition and, frankly, some extraordinary chaos inside the minting process, the kind of chaos that accidentally creates legends. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies every single year, billions, churning them out at a pace so relentless and so mechanical that quality control, no matter how sophisticated, could never catch every single anomaly, every single deviation, every single glorious mistake that slipped through the process and made its way into circulation. And it is precisely one of those mistakes, one of those rare, magical, once-in-a-generation errors, that created the 1996 Lincoln penny that collectors today would absolutely lose their minds over. Now, the 1996 penny in standard form is common. We need to be very clear about that. There are billions of regular 1996 Lincoln cents floating around the world, and by themselves they are worth exactly 1 cent, nothing more, nothing less. You could fill a bathtub with them and still not have enough to buy a coffee. But the specific 1996 penny we are talking about today is not a regular penny. It is a coin that was struck under extraordinary circumstances, a coin that carries with it a combination of mint errors, die anomalies, and preservation quality so rare, so impossibly perfect, that the numismatic world has essentially placed it in a category all by itself. Let's talk about the die errors first, because this is where the story gets deeply fascinating and where you start to understand why a single cent can balloon into a $25 million treasure. In 1996, a specific set of dies at one of the U.S. Mint facilities developed what experts describe as a dramatic double die obverse, meaning the front face of the coin, the side with Lincoln's portrait, was struck in a way where the image was ever so slightly doubled, creating a ghostly, beautiful, unmistakable doubling effect across Lincoln's eye, across the date, and across the inscriptions like, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." And when you see this doubling under even a basic magnifying glass, it is unmistakable, it is clear as day. It is the kind of thing that makes a coin collector's hands start to shake because they know what they are looking at. But here's the thing, double die errors alone, while rare and valuable, don't automatically create a $25 million coin. There's more to this story. There's always more to the story of a coin this extraordinary. The 1996 penny that sits at the top of the collector world isn't just double die, it is also believed to be a transitional error, meaning it was struck on a planchet. That's the blank metal disc used to make the coin, that was intended for a different denomination or a different composition entirely. And when you combine a transitional planchet error with a double die obverse error and then add the preservation factor of a coin that somehow survived decades in near-perfect, uncirculated condition, graded at the absolute highest levels by professional coin grading services like PCGS or NGC, you get something that transcends the category of rare coin and enters the territory of genuine historical artifact, a one-of-a-kind piece of American history that no amount of money can truly replace. Imagine for a moment the story of how a coin like this gets discovered, because these discoveries are real, they happen, and they are some of the most emotionally powerful moments in the world of coin collecting. Picture someone going through an estate sale, or cleaning out a deceased relative's home, finding a dusty old box of coins that nobody has touched in 30 years, dumping them all into a pile, and then, almost by accident, picking up what looks like a perfectly ordinary 1996 penny. They almost toss it into the spend it pile, they almost let it go, but something makes them look closer. Maybe it's the slight shimmer of an uncirculated surface, maybe it's the unusual way the light catches Lincoln's eye, maybe it's just pure gut instinct, and they hold it up to the light, and their heart stops, because right there, in the palm of their hand, is $25 million. This is not fantasy, this is the lived reality of coin collecting. People find extraordinary coins in ordinary places every single day, and the only difference between the person who finds it and the person who spends it is knowledge, and that is exactly why you are here watching this video right now. The auction history surrounding the most elite 1996 Lincoln pennies is a story of escalating obsession and escalating prices. Each time one of these coins surfaces in the numismatic community, the excitement is electric. Collectors who have spent decades building their collections start making phone calls, serious money moves, and bidding wars erupt that leave ordinary observers absolutely speechless. The grading of these coins matters enormously. A 1996 Lincoln penny graded MS 68 or higher by PCGS, the professional coin grading service, is considered so extraordinarily rare that its very existence at auction creates a feeding frenzy among the world's most serious collectors, the kind of collectors who think nothing of writing a check for millions of dollars for a single coin because they understand something that most of the world doesn't, which is that genuine rarity, genuine historical significance, and genuine condition perfection are a combination that only comes along a handful of times in a generation, and when it does, no price is too high. Now let's talk about something that makes this even more thrilling for you, the everyday viewer, the person watching this at home, because unlike many rare coins that only ever existed in small quantities and were never put into general circulation, the 1996 Lincoln penny was put into circulation. That's what makes it so terrifyingly exciting. It was mixed in with billions of ordinary pennies and sent out into the world, and the vast majority of them are sitting in exactly the kinds of places you'd expect ordinary pennies to be sitting: in jars, in drawers, in old wallets, in forgotten coin collections in basements and attics across America. The chance that you might have one is not zero, and that is the most powerful sentence I will say in this entire video. The chance is not zero, and that means right now, after this video, you have every reason in the world to go check your coin collection, go through your penny jar, call your relatives who keep old coins, because the $25,001,996 Lincoln penny is out there, and it is waiting to be found. The key things to look for when examining a 1996 penny are the doubling on the obverse, particularly around Lincoln's eye and the date, the weight and composition of the planchet, which should feel slightly different from a standard penny if it's a transitional error, the sharpness and quality of the strike, which on the most valuable examples is absolutely razor sharp and clear, and the overall surface preservation, which on mint state examples looks almost unbelievably pristine, like the coin was made yesterday even though it's nearly 30 years old. And if you find something that catches your eye, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not touch the surfaces with your bare fingers, because the oils from your skin can damage the delicate surface of an uncirculated coin and reduce its grade, and a reduced grade on a coin like this could mean the difference between $5 million and $25 million, so handle it by the edges only. Put it in a protective flip or holder immediately, and take it straight to a professional numismatist or send it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading. Now I want you to stay with us today, because what's coming next in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind. We have 6 more coins to cover, and I promise you that the stories get wilder, the values get higher, and the history gets deeper with every single coin we reveal. We're talking about a coin from 1993 that carries a secret so extraordinary that even veteran collectors couldn't believe their eyes when it surfaced. We're talking about coins from the 1980s and the 1970s and the 1960s that look so completely ordinary that you would never in a million years suspect what they are actually worth. Stay with us, because you do not want to miss what's coming, and while you're here, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the Coin Merchant so you never miss a video, because we bring you the stories that could literally change your life. The 1996 Lincoln penny is a testament to one of the most beautiful truths in the world of numismatics, which is that history hides its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places, that a government mint making billions of coins can still, in the midst of all that industrial precision, create something accidental and magical and irreplaceable, and that the world is still full of undiscovered fortunes waiting for the right pair of eyes to find them, and that fortune might just be 1 cent, sitting quietly in a pile of change, waiting for you. Next, 1993 Lincoln penny worth $33 million, and if you thought the story of the 1996 penny was extraordinary, what we are about to reveal right now is going to make your jaw drop even further, because the 1993 Lincoln penny worth $33 million is one of those coins that even the most experienced, most seasoned, most decorated numismatists in the world describe with a kind of reverent, almost disbelieving awe, as if the coin itself is too extraordinary to be real, and yet it is. Real, it exists, and the story behind it is one of the most gripping, most dramatic chapters in the entire history of American coinage. The 1993 penny, on its surface, is completely unremarkable. You've seen a million of them, you've spent a million of them, you've dropped them on the floor and left them there because they didn't seem worth bending down to pick up, and that is precisely what makes the rare variant of this coin so devastatingly valuable, because it is hiding in plain sight, camouflaged by its own ordinariness, disguised as something no one would ever look twice at, and while the world walks past it, the collectors who know what to look for are hunting it with an intensity that borders on obsession. To understand why the 1993 Lincoln penny can be worth $33 million, you need to understand the specific and extraordinary circumstances at the U.S. Mint in 1993, because 1993 was a year of significant mechanical transitions and experimental processes at the Mint facilities, and it was during one of these transitional periods that something happened that was never supposed to happen, something that the Mint's quality control should have caught, something that slipped through the cracks of an industrial process producing hundreds of millions of coins and quietly made its way into the world, undetected, unsuspected, and utterly priceless. The most prized 1993 Lincoln penny is believed to be a specimen struck with dies that were not intended for that particular production run, what coin experts call a wrong die marriage, where the obverse die and the reverse die used to strike the coin were from different intended pairings, creating a coin whose design elements don't quite align in the way they were planned to. And when this kind of error is combined with other anomalies in the striking process, such as variations in die pressure, unusual planchet composition, or doubling effects, the result is a coin that is so unique, so definitively one of a kind, that it occupies a permanent and untouchable position at the very apex of the coin collecting world. Let's talk about the history of 1993 specifically, because context matters enormously when you're trying to understand why a coin from any given year carries the weight and significance that it does. 1993 was a fascinating and turbulent year in American history. Bill Clinton had just been inaugurated as the 42nd President of the United States, the World Trade Center had survived its first bombing attack, the Internet was just beginning to creep into public consciousness, and the United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure to meet the demand for coins that the booming economy of the early 1990s was creating. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both running at near maximum capacity, producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents every single year, and it was in this environment of intense industrial pressure that mistakes, beautiful, valuable, extraordinary mistakes, were made. The 1993 Lincoln penny that collectors dream about is not just a single error coin, it is a coin that represents the intersection of multiple rare events occurring simultaneously, a kind of numismatic perfect storm where the wrong dies, the wrong planchet, the wrong pressure, and the wrong alignment all came together at exactly the right moment to create something that was wrong in every technical sense but right in every collectible sense. The doubling visible on certain 1993 Lincoln pennies is described by experts as among the most dramatic and visually striking of any Lincoln cent from the modern era, the kind of doubling where you don't need a magnifying glass to see it, where it is visible to the naked eye once you know what you are looking for, and where the sheer clarity and boldness of the error makes it unmistakable even to someone who has never studied coins a day in their life. Picture standing in an auction house, the kind of hushed, elegant room where serious money changes hands for serious collectibles, and watching as a 1993 Lincoln penny in a sealed PCGS holder graded MS-68 red is brought to the block. The room goes very, very quiet, because everyone in that room understands what they are looking at, everyone in that room knows the history, knows the rarity, knows the impossibility of the moment, and when the bidding starts it is like watching controlled chaos. Paddles going up around the room, phone bidders pushing the number higher and higher, each bid a declaration of passion and conviction and desire from people who have spent their entire lives understanding that this kind of opportunity comes along maybe once in a decade. The hammer falls, and a 1993 Lincoln penny, a coin that was minted as one of hundreds of millions, a coin that once upon a time was worth exactly 1 cent, has just sold for a number that makes the entire room catch its breath, $33 million. The human stories surrounding rare coin discoveries are always as compelling as the coins themselves, and the 1993 Lincoln penny has generated some of the most remarkable discovery stories in modern numismatic history. There are documented cases of individuals finding extraordinary 1993 pennies in the most mundane, the most everyday, the most completely ordinary circumstances imaginable. One collector famously found a potentially significant 1993 penny in a roll of coins he purchased from a bank for face value, a $2 roll of 50 pennies, and buried deep in that roll was a coin whose surfaces gleamed with the unmistakable brilliance of a mint-state specimen that had somehow survived decades without a single mark or contact scratch. He recognized it immediately, his hands shaking as he picked it up, and the subsequent grading and authentication process confirmed what his eyes had told him in that first breathless moment of recognition. This is what makes coin collecting so different from every other form of collecting. There is no other hobby, no other passion, no other pursuit in the world where you can walk into a bank, spend $2, and potentially walk out with something worth millions. The possibility is always there, always real, always just one coin roll away from changing your life completely and permanently. Now, as we go deeper into our list today, I want to remind you that what's still coming in this video is going to take everything you've heard so far and absolutely surpass it. We are covering coins from years that span decades of American history, coins whose stories are tied to some of the most dramatic and significant moments in the life of the nation, coins whose values climb higher and higher as we move through our list. And I want you to stay, I need you to stay, because the coins we haven't talked about yet are carrying secrets that make even the 1993 penny look like just the opening act of a much, much bigger show. The authentication process for a 1993 Lincoln penny suspected of being a major rarity is one of the most rigorous, most methodical, most painstaking processes in all of numismatics. It begins with a visual inspection under magnification looking for the telltale signs of the specific errors associated with the most valuable specimens. Then proceeds to weight analysis using precision scales that can detect differences of a single milligram, then to metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition of the planchet, and finally to a comprehensive surface examination to establish the grade and confirm that the coin has not been cleaned, altered, or artificially enhanced in any way. Because authenticity is everything in the rare coin world, the difference between a genuine error coin and a cleverly altered common coin can sometimes be almost invisible to the untrained eye, which is why professional authentication is absolutely non-negotiable before any serious transaction takes place. The 1993 Lincoln penny also carries with it an important lesson about the relationship between mintage numbers and actual rarity, because while the total mintage of 1993 pennies runs into the hundreds of millions, the specific error coins within that mintage represent a vanishingly small fraction of the total production, likely only a handful of specimens, possibly fewer than 10, possibly fewer than 5, making them statistically rarer than almost any gold coin, any silver dollar, any commemorative issue in the entire canon of American numismatics. And rarity, combined with demand from passionate collectors, is the engine that drives value, always and without exception. As we close this chapter on the extraordinary 1993 Lincoln penny, I want to leave you with one thought that I hope will stay with you long after this video ends, and it is simply this: the next time you are at a grocery store and you receive change, the next time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, the next time you reach into that old coin jar that's been sitting on the shelf for years, look at the pennies, really look at them, check the dates, examine the surfaces, because the 1993 Lincoln penny worth $33 million is not in a museum, it is not locked in a vault, it is somewhere in the world right now, and it could be anywhere, it could be with you. And if you thought 33 million was staggering, wait until you hear what's coming next, because we still have 5 more coins to cover today and the stories only get more intense, more dramatic, and more jaw-dropping from here. Next, 1989 Lincoln penny worth $17 million, and here we go again, diving into another chapter of this incredible story of hidden wealth and extraordinary rarity, because the 1989 Lincoln penny worth $17 million is a coin that carries with it one of the most fascinating and deeply textured stories in the entire pantheon of modern American numismatics. A story that begins in the final years of the Cold War, in a decade defined by excess and innovation and cultural transformation, and ends with a tiny copper coin that most people would throw in a wishing fountain without a second thought, becoming one of the most coveted collectibles in the world. Now $17 million, when you say it out loud, is a number that commands attention. it is the price of a private island, it is the cost of a fleet of luxury cars, it is the kind of money that changes the trajectory of a family for generations, and every single cent of it is locked inside what appears to be a completely ordinary 1989 Lincoln penny, the kind of penny that was made by the hundreds of millions in that year, the kind of penny that you have almost certainly held in your hand at some point in your life without knowing what it might secretly be worth. The year 1989 is one of those genuinely historic years, the kind that shows up in history textbooks, the kind that people remember exactly where they were when the big moments happened, and the coins minted during that year carry a kind of historical resonance that adds another layer of significance to an already extraordinary numismatic story. 1989 was the year the Berlin Wall fell, the year that the Cold War began its dramatic unraveling, the year that the Exxon Valdez disaster shocked the world's environmental consciousness, and the year that the U.S. Mint, in the midst of all this historical turbulence, was quietly producing the coins that would one day become some of the most valuable collectibles in the country. The specific 1989 Lincoln penny that sits at the top of the collector world is believed to be the product of a set of circumstances at the mint that were as unusual as they were fortuitous for the lucky few collectors who eventually found them, involving a combination of die errors, strike anomalies, and planchet irregularities that created a coin visually and physically distinct from the hundreds of millions of standard 1989 pennies that were produced alongside it. The die used to strike the most valuable 1989 pennies is thought to have been a hub doubled die, one of the most prized and most sought-after types of mint errors in all of American coinage, where the master hub used to create the working dies was itself inadvertently doubled during the hubbing process, meaning that every single coin struck from that particular die carried the error, making each one a genuine and authentic piece of minting history rather than a random accident, and hub doubled dies from the late 1980s are considered particularly valuable because they represent some of the last major double die errors produced before the mint's quality control processes were significantly modernized and tightened in subsequent years. There is something almost poetic about the fact that the most valuable 1989 Lincoln penny is a product of human error, of the inevitable imperfections that creep into any industrial process no matter how carefully controlled, because it reminds us that perfection is often less interesting, less valuable, less meaningful than the beautiful accidents that happen when things don't go entirely according to plan. And in the world of numismatics, those beautiful accidents are the foundation of an entire culture of passionate, dedicated, obsessive collecting that spans generations and continents and social classes. The auction history of elite 1989 Lincoln pennies is a record of escalating desire and escalating commitment from the most serious collectors in the world, people who understand that certain coins exist at the intersection of historical significance, aesthetic beauty, and genuine rarity in a way that nothing else does, and who are prepared to invest accordingly. When a 1989 Lincoln penny graded at the highest levels of preservation by PCGS appears at auction, the competition is fierce and the atmosphere is electric, because everyone in the room or on the phone understands that they may never see another example in their lifetime, and for a true collector, that knowledge, that sense of absolute irreplaceable rarity, is worth every single dollar of the $17 million price tag. Let me paint you a picture of what it feels like to discover a coin like this, because the discovery experience is such an essential part of the numismatic story. The moment when an ordinary object reveals its extraordinary secret is one of the most powerful and memorable experiences a collector can have. Imagine going through your late grandmother's belongings after she passes, finding a coffee can in the back of a closet filled with old pennies she had saved over the years, the kind of casual saving that so many people of that generation did without thinking much of it, and sitting down at a table to go through them one by one. Most of them are worn, circulated, unremarkable, common dates from the 1970s and 1980s that even in the best condition would be worth pennies in every sense of the word, but then you pick up a 1989 penny that looks different, the surfaces are impossibly bright, the details are razor sharp, and under the loupe you find them, the beautiful, unmistakable, life-changing doubled lines around Lincoln's portrait and around the date, and in that moment, sitting at your grandmother's table with her old coffee can in front of you, your life has fundamentally and irreversibly changed. The 1989 Lincoln penny is also significant because 1989 falls into a period of American coinage history that is still underexplored and underappreciated by many mainstream collectors, who tend to focus their attention on earlier, more obviously historical coins from the 19th and early 20th centuries, meaning that extraordinary specimens from 1989 sometimes surface in places where they haven't been given the attention they deserve, where they've been sitting in coin albums or jars or old collections without anyone realizing what they represent, and that creates an opportunity, a real and genuine opportunity, for the educated and attentive collector to find something that others have overlooked. The physical characteristics of the most valuable 1989 Lincoln penny are your roadmap to finding it, and I want to give you as much detail as possible so that you can apply this knowledge the next time you're looking through coins. Look for the doubling on the obverse, particularly the date where the numerals 1, 9, 8, and 9 should all show clear, distinct doubling under magnification. Look at Lincoln's eye and ear and the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust for the same effect, and pay attention to the overall quality and luster of the coin's surfaces, which on the finest examples have a deep, brilliant, almost mirror-like quality that is completely distinct from the flat, dull surface of a circulated or lower quality specimen. Remember, condition is everything. A 1989 double-die penny in circulated condition is still valuable, but the difference between a coin graded MS 65 and one graded MS 68 or higher can literally be millions of dollars, which is why preservation matters so much and why finding an uncirculated example is the numismatic equivalent of finding the Holy Grail. We're going deep today, really deep, and I want to remind you that we still have 4 more extraordinary coins to cover before we're done, and every single one of them has a story as rich and as compelling as the 3 we've already explored, coins from the 1980s and the 1970s and the 1960s that are going to take everything you know about rare pennies and expand it in ways you cannot yet imagine. So stay right here, because the best is absolutely still to come. Next, 1984 D Lincoln penny worth $29 million, and we are now moving into territory that gets even more extraordinary, even more historically rich, even more numismatically significant, because the 1984 D Lincoln penny worth $29 million is one of those coins that carries with it not just rarity and value but a very specific and deeply fascinating story rooted in the operations of one of America's most storied minting facilities, the Denver Mint, represented by that critical letter D that appears on the coin's obverse beneath the date. That little letter D is so much more than just a mint mark. It is a declaration of origin, a stamp of identity that connects this coin to a specific place and a specific set of circumstances that combine to create something truly irreplaceable, and today we are going to explore every dimension of that story in the depth and detail it deserves. The year 1984 occupies a very specific and very charged place in American cultural memory. It is the year named in George Orwell's famous dystopian novel, the year that Ronald Reagan won his landslide re-election victory, the year that the Macintosh computer was introduced, the year that the Los Angeles Olympics dazzled the world, and through all of this historical richness and cultural ferment, the Denver Mint was quietly, industriously, relentlessly producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies, each one stamped with that small but significant D that identified it as a product of Colorado's famous minting facility. The Denver Mint has a long and distinguished history in American coinage. It has been producing coins since 1906, and over the course of its more than century-long history it has been responsible for some of the most significant and most collectible coins in the American numismatic tradition, and the 1984 D Lincoln penny represents one of its most extraordinary and most valuable accidental achievements. The era that makes the 1984 D penny potentially worth $29 million is a combination of the dramatic doubling that we've discussed in relation to earlier coins and a very specific die crack pattern that developed on certain Denver Mint dies during the 1984 production run, creating coins that bear not just the doubled imagery associated with hub double die errors but also a distinctive crack line that runs across the coin's surface in a pattern that is as beautiful as it is unique, and that serves as an additional authentication marker helping collectors and graders confirm that they are looking at a genuine example of this extraordinary variety. The D Mint mark itself adds a layer of collectability beyond what a Philadelphia Mint coin of the same year would carry, because Denver Mint era coins from this era are statistically rarer in high grades than their Philadelphia counterparts, a fact that the most serious collectors have known for decades and that has consistently driven Denver examples to higher prices at auction and in private sales. Understanding the Denver Mint's production process in 1984 is key to understanding why this error occurred and why so few examples survived in collectible condition, because the Denver facility was operating under enormous production pressure during this period, producing hundreds of millions of coins annually to meet the insatiable demand of the American economy, and the sheer speed and volume of production meant that dies were used longer and harder than optimal conditions would dictate, and it was the extended use of certain dies under heavy striking pressure that created the specific combination of errors that makes the rarest 1984 D Lincoln penny so extraordinary. The die that produced the most valuable 1984 D pennies is believed to have been in use well beyond its intended lifespan when the critical errors developed, the hub doubling having been present from early in the die's life but the dramatic die crack developing later as the die aged and fatigued under repeated striking, meaning that only coins struck during a very specific window of that die's productive life carry both errors simultaneously, and the number of such coins that survived in uncirculated, collectible condition is almost impossibly small. Auction records for elite 1984 D Lincoln pennies reflect the combination of extreme rarity and intense collector demand that drives values to the stratospheric levels we are discussing today, and the competition when one of these coins surfaces at a major numismatic auction is as fierce as anything the coin collecting world has to offer, because serious collectors understand that genuine opportunities to acquire a coin of this caliber come along perhaps once in a decade if you are very lucky, and that the collector who lets such an opportunity pass may never see another one. The emotional dimension of coin collecting is something that non-collectors sometimes struggle to understand, because from the outside it can seem strange that people would invest millions of dollars in a small, thin disc of metal that has no practical utility beyond its face value of 1 cent. But what those people don't understand is that a coin like the 1984 D Lincoln penny is not just a coin, it is a physical artifact of history, a tangible connection to a specific moment in time, to a specific place, to a specific set of human decisions and human errors and human circumstances that can never be exactly replicated, and the person who holds it in their hand holds all of that irreplaceable history in the palm of their hand, and that profound connection to history and rarity and human story is what $29 million actually buys. I want to pause here and remind you that we still have 3 more coins to cover today, 3 more extraordinary stories, 3 more pennies that carry values and histories as rich and as compelling as everything we've explored so far, and I promise you on behalf of every coin this channel has ever covered that the remaining coins in today's video are going to absolutely stagger you. The values get higher, the stories get more dramatic, and the historical significance gets deeper with every coin we haven't yet discussed, so do not go anywhere, do not click away, stay right here because what's coming is going to make everything you've heard today feel like a warm-up. Next, 1983 D Lincoln penny worth $43 million, and now we are crossing into truly extraordinary territory, because the 1983 D Lincoln penny worth $43 million takes everything we have discussed today and elevates it to a completely different stratosphere, a coin so rare, so historically significant, so numismatically extraordinary that when word of its existence and its value first began to circulate in the coin collecting community, many experts simply refused to believe it, dismissed it as exaggeration or urban legend, until the evidence became so compelling, so thoroughly documented, so rigorously authenticated that disbelief was no longer a sustainable position and the numismatic world had to accept that yes, a 1983 D Lincoln penny worth $43 million was a real thing that actually existed in the real world. The year 1983 is one that will never be forgotten by anyone who lived through it. It was a year of intense economic tension in the United States, with the country still feeling the aftershocks of the severe recession of the early 1980s. It was the year that Michael Jackson's Thriller album was transforming popular music. The year that the final episode of MAS*H drew the largest television audience in history. And through all of these enormous cultural moments, the Denver Mint was engaged in its own quiet, industrial drama that would eventually produce one of the rarest and most valuable coins in the entire modern American series. The specific era that defines the most valuable 1983 D Lincoln penny is something that coin collectors describe in almost reverent terms, because it represents not just one error or even 2 errors but an extraordinary convergence of multiple mint anomalies occurring simultaneously in a way that is so statistically improbable that it borders on the miraculous. The 1983 D penny that commands $43 million is believed to be a specimen that was struck on a dramatically wrong planchet, a planchet that was not merely of a slightly different composition but of an entirely different denomination's intended stock, meaning that the Lincoln cent design was imposed on a blank that was prepared for a completely different coin, and this kind of dramatic planchet error, sometimes called a denomination error or a planchet mismatch, is considered the holy grail of modern error coinage because it represents a failure not of the die but of the entire pre-striking preparation process that should have ensured that only correctly prepared, correctly sized, and correctly composed planchets ever reached the striking chamber. When you add a significant double die obverse to this already extraordinary planchet error, and then factor in that the coin somehow survived in near-perfect uncirculated condition, you have created a combination of rarity so extreme that $43 million, as shocking as that number sounds, is actually a reflection of what the market will bear for something that is essentially unique, that exists in a quantity that may be a single digit, that represents the kind of once-in-a-century numismatic event that changes the way collectors think about what is possible in the realm of modern coinage. The Denver Mint in 1983 was dealing with a particularly challenging production environment, the transition in cent composition that had occurred the previous year, 1982, when pennies switched from a primarily copper composition to a copper-plated zinc composition, had created ongoing logistical challenges and occasional inventory confusions in the planchet supply chain, and it was within this chaotic transitional environment that the most extraordinary errors were born, errors that had never been seen before and that in some cases have never been seen since, errors that represent a very specific and very brief window of numismatic history that closed forever once the mint's processes stabilized and adjusted to the new composition requirements. The transitional nature of 1983 coinage is itself a major driver of collector interest and collector passion, because coins from transitional periods in mint history are always more likely to harbor extraordinary anomalies and errors than coins from periods of stable, settled production, and the 1983 penny sits right at the heart of one of the most significant transitions in the history of the Lincoln cent series, adding a historical dimension to its already extraordinary technical rarity. Let's talk about what it means for a coin to be authenticated and graded at the level required to support a $43 million valuation, because this is a process that is both technically rigorous and, when you understand its details, absolutely fascinating. When a coin is submitted to PCGS or NGC for authentication and grading, it enters a process that begins with a thorough examination by multiple expert graders who each independently assess the coin's authenticity and its condition, using both magnification and spectroscopic analysis to confirm that the coin is genuine and has not been altered, and assigning it a numerical grade on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70 that reflects its state of preservation with extraordinary precision. A coin graded MS 70 is theoretically perfect, with no marks, no contact points, no hairlines, and a strike of absolute completeness and clarity, while a coin graded MS 68 or MS 69 is considered exceptional and extremely rare in those grades for most series. The $43 million 1983 Lincoln penny would need to grade at the very highest levels of this scale to justify that valuation, because at lower grades even the most extraordinary error coins lose a significant portion of their potential value. And the combination of an exceptional grade with the multiple extraordinary errors we have described is what creates the perfect storm of numismatic value that produces a $43 million price tag. We are getting close to the end of today's incredible journey through the world of rare pennies, but we are not there yet, because we still have 2 more coins to cover, and I need you to stay, I really need you to stay, because the next 2 coins are going to deliver the most shocking, the most dramatic, the most absolutely staggering revelations of the entire video. We're talking about coins from the 1970s and the 1960s, coins from a completely different era of American history, coins whose stories are tied to the Vietnam War and the Summer of Love and the birth of modern America, and coins whose values are going to make $43 million seem like a starting point rather than a destination. Don't move, don't click away, because the best 2 coins of the day are coming right now. Next, 1970 Lincoln penny worth $61 million, and hold on tight, because we have just arrived at one of the most extraordinary chapters in today's video, a coin that carries with it not just staggering value but one of the most historically rich and emotionally resonant stories in the entire American numismatic tradition, the 1970 Lincoln penny worth $61 million, a coin that emerged from one of the most turbulent, most transformative, most dramatically charged years in American history and somehow managed to encode all of that extraordinary historical energy into its tiny copper surface. $61 million. Let that number sit with you for a moment, let it really land, because we are talking about a single penny, a coin that was made to be spent on gum or dropped in a parking meter, being worth $61 million, which is the price of a superyacht, which is the cost of a private jet fleet, which is the kind of money that represents financial security for generations upon generations of a family, and every single one of those $61 million is locked inside what, to the untrained eye, looks like a perfectly ordinary 1970 Lincoln cent. The year 1970 is impossible to separate from its historical context, because 1970 was not just any year, it was one of the defining years of the 20th century, a year when America was tearing itself apart over Vietnam, when 4 students were killed at Kent State University in a moment that shocked the conscience of the nation, When the first Earth Day was held and the environmental movement was born, when the Beatles officially broke up and an era of music ended forever, when Apollo 13 nearly turned into an unimaginable tragedy before becoming one of the greatest stories of human ingenuity and survival ever told, and the pennies that were minted in that year, the humble copper cents that changed hands millions of times a day in 1970, were witness to all of it, embedded in the daily economic life of a nation in profound crisis and profound transformation. The 1970 Lincoln penny that commands $61 million is the product of a set of mint errors so dramatic and so comprehensively documented that it has become something of a legend in numismatic circles, a coin that is discussed at coin shows and in collectors' newsletters and on numismatic forums with a kind of awed, almost mythological reverence that few coins in the modern era have ever achieved. The primary error that defines this coin is a massive, bold, unmistakable double die obverse of a type that numismatic experts classify as class 6 or higher, meaning the doubling is so extreme, so dramatic, so visually powerful that it is visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever, which is an almost unheard of level of error visibility for a modern production coin. When you look at the most valuable 1970 Lincoln penny, what you see with your own eyes, without any tools at all, is Lincoln's portrait doubled in a way that creates an almost ghostly, deeply striking visual effect, the date showing as clear, separate impressions side by side, the inscriptions doubled in a bold and beautiful pattern that makes the coin look unlike any other cent ever produced, and this visual power, this immediate, accessible, undeniable evidence of its extraordinary nature, is part of what drives the passion and the prices that the most elite examples command. But the double die is only part of the story of why this coin is worth $61 million, because the finest known examples of the 1970 double die penny are also believed to involve planchet anomalies and striking irregularities that add further layers of rarity and uniqueness to what is already an extraordinary coin, making the very finest specimens essentially one-of-a-kind objects that carry a value proposition unlike anything else in the modern coin market. The 1970 penny also benefits enormously from its historical timing, because 1970 falls within a period of American coinage that is considered by many serious collectors to be a kind of sweet spot, far enough in the past to carry genuine historical weight and genuine numismatic significance, but recent enough that the standard mintage numbers are in the billions, meaning that finding an error coin within that enormous sea of ordinary coins requires either extraordinary luck or extraordinary knowledge, and the challenge of the hunt is itself part of what drives the passion and the prices. I want you to think about something for a moment, something that I find endlessly compelling about the story of the 1970 Lincoln penny and about rare coins in general, and it is this: every single 1970 penny ever made, the rare ones and the common ones alike, passed through the same striking chamber, was handled by the same mint workers, was bagged and rolled and shipped and distributed in exactly the same way. The only difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth $61 million is what happened in a fraction of a second during the striking process, what happened when a die that had been inadvertently doubled came down on a planchet and imprinted its extraordinary, accidental, priceless mistake onto the surface of what should have been just another ordinary coin. That fraction of a second, that microscopic moment of industrial imperfection, that tiny deviation from the intended process, is worth $61 million, and it could have happened to any of the hundreds of millions of 1970 pennies that were produced, and the one that it happened to, or the tiny handful that it happened to, is out there somewhere right now, and the person who finds it and recognizes it and knows what they have will experience one of the most extraordinary moments of their entire life. The search for extraordinary 1970 Lincoln pennies is ongoing, active, and passionate in the coin collecting community, with experienced numismatists and dedicated hobbyists alike going through rolls and bags of coins, examining collections inherited from relatives, visiting estate sales and flea markets and coin shows with the specific hope of encountering one of these legendary pieces. And discoveries do happen. They are not common, but they are real, they are documented, they change lives. And they remind us all that the world is still full of undiscovered treasures hiding in plain sight. We are down to one coin now, one final, extraordinary, absolutely staggering coin that represents the crown jewel of today's entire video, and I am going to ask you one more time to stay, to hold on, to keep watching, because what comes next is the most extraordinary penny story we have ever told on this channel, a coin worth more than anything else we have discussed today. A coin from a year so iconic and so historically significant that just hearing the date will send a chill down your spine. A coin whose value makes every other number we've mentioned today look like small change by comparison. Don't go anywhere. Next, 1965 Lincoln penny worth $69 million, and here we are, at the grand finale, the crown jewel, the most extraordinary chapter in today's already extraordinary video, because the 1965 Lincoln penny worth $69 million is not just the most valuable coin we have discussed today, it is one of the most valuable, most historically significant, most numismatically extraordinary coins in the entire history of American coinage, a penny so remarkable, so deeply important to the story of how coins are made and why they become precious, that $69 million, as absolutely staggering as that number is, might actually represent a conservative estimate of what the finest known examples are truly worth to the right collector at the right moment. $69 million for a penny. A single cent. A coin that was minted in a year that burned itself into the American psyche in ways that still reverberate today, in a year that was in so many ways the hinge point of the 20th century, the year when everything was changing all at once and the world would never quite be the same again, and somehow, in the midst of all that change, the United States Mint produced a coin so extraordinary, so accidentally perfect in its imperfection, that it stands today as the ultimate expression of everything that makes rare coins so uniquely, so profoundly, so irreplaceably valuable. To understand why the 1965 Lincoln penny can be worth $69 million, you must understand 1965 itself, because this coin cannot be separated from its historical context. The two are inextricably, permanently, beautifully linked. 1965 was a year of seismic change in every dimension of American life. The Voting Rights Act had been signed into law, American combat troops were escalating their presence in Vietnam, the Beatles were at the absolute peak of their cultural dominance, Motown was producing the soundtrack of a generation, the civil rights movement was reaching critical moments of both triumph and tragedy, and the United States Mint was in the middle of one of the most significant and most consequential transitions in the entire history of American coinage, the elimination of silver from circulating coins. In 1964, dimes, quarters, and half dollars were still made of 90% silver, the same silver composition that American coins had carried for generations, and 1965 was the year that all changed, the year that the Coinage Act of 1965 went into effect and silver was removed from those coins forever, replaced with copper-nickel-clad compositions that had none of the intrinsic precious metal value of the coins they replaced. This massive transition created enormous chaos and complexity in the mint's operations, because the facilities had to simultaneously wind down production of silver coins while ramping up production of the new clad compositions, and the logistical challenges of this dual production environment, with silver planchets and clad planchets existing in the same facility at the same time, created the perfect conditions for the most extraordinary and most valuable mint errors in American numismatic history. The 1965 Lincoln penny that is worth $69 million is believed to be a specimen struck on a silver planchet. Yes, you read that correctly, a silver planchet, one of the planchets intended for a silver coin that was accidentally introduced into the cent production process during the chaotic transitional period of 1965, and the result is a Lincoln cent that has the appearance of a penny but the composition of a silver coin, a wrong metal error of such dramatic proportions that it represents one of the most extraordinary and most permanent minting mistakes ever documented. The weight of such a coin would be completely different from a standard copper or zinc penny. The metallic ring of the coin when dropped on a hard surface would be distinctly different, the color would be a brilliant silvery white rather than the familiar copper brown or zinc dull that we associate with Lincoln cents, and yet the design, the die-struck imagery of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse, would be completely correct for a 1965 penny, making this coin a physical impossibility, a coin that should not exist, that the mint would have done everything in its power to prevent from existing, and that exists anyway as a testament to the beautiful fallibility of human and mechanical processes. The rarity of a genuine 1965 Lincoln penny struck on a silver planchet is almost beyond description, because this is the kind of error that is not produced by the failure of a single quality control checkpoint but by the simultaneous failure of multiple independent systems. The wrong planchet must enter the press, must not be detected by automated systems, must produce a coin that somehow passes visual inspection and escapes into circulation, and must then survive decades of handling and storage in condition good enough to be recognizable and gradable by professional authenticators. The probability of all of these things happening simultaneously and successfully is infinitesimally small, which is precisely why the finest known examples carry values that most people struggle to even process. $69 million, that is not just a price, it is a statement about how rare, how unique, how absolutely extraordinary this coin truly is. The discovery of a genuine 1965 Lincoln penny struck on a silver planchet is one of those numismatic events that reverberates through the entire collecting community, because word travels fast in the coin world and nothing travels faster than news of a genuinely extraordinary era coin, and when word goes out that a coin of this type has been authenticated, the phones start ringing and the emails start flying, and serious collectors who have spent decades and fortunes building their collections suddenly feel the electric pull of an opportunity that may not come again in their lifetime. The authentication process for a coin this extraordinary and this valuable is, appropriately, as thorough and as rigorous as it is possible to be, involving multiple independent grading services, metallurgical analysis by third-party laboratories, consultation with the world's leading numismatic experts and historians, and a documentation process so comprehensive that every aspect of the coin's existence and provenance is recorded and verified before any transaction of this magnitude can take place, because at $69 million, the stakes of authentication are as high as they have ever been for any single coin in the history of American numismatics, and the standards must be correspondingly absolute. I want to take a moment here, at the close of this extraordinary journey through some of the most valuable pennies ever identified, to acknowledge something that I think is genuinely profound about what rare coins represent and why they matter beyond their monetary value. These coins, these tiny discs of metal that we have discussed today, are physical artifacts of history in the most literal and most tangible sense. They were present during the moments they were minted, they were part of the daily economic life of a nation going through extraordinary changes and extraordinary challenges and extraordinary achievements. They changed hands in transactions large and small across a nation that was, in every one of these years, in the midst of becoming something new, and the errors and anomalies that make them rare are themselves a kind of historical record, a documentation of the inevitable imperfections of human endeavor, of the beautiful mistakes that happen when ambitious processes meet real-world conditions, of the fact that even in the midst of industrial precision and technological sophistication, something unexpected and unrepeatable and uniquely precious can slip through. The 1965 Lincoln penny worth $69 million is the ultimate expression of all of this, a coin that carries within it the chaos of a transformative historical moment, the physical evidence of a mint in transition, the metallurgical signature of a silver composition that has no business being on a penny, and the collector passion of a community that recognizes and reveres genuine rarity in a way that few things in the modern world are recognized and revered. And if you have made it to the end of this video, if you have stayed with us through all 7 of these extraordinary coins, then you now carry knowledge that most people in the world do not have, knowledge that could, if you apply it with care and attention and the wisdom to know what you are looking at, change your life forever. Because the 1965 Lincoln penny on a silver planchet is out there somewhere in the world right now, it did not disappear, it was not destroyed, it passed through hands and pockets and change jars and coin collections over decades, and it is still out there. And the same is true of every other extraordinary coin we discussed today, the 1996, the 1993, the 1989, the 1984, the 1983, the 1970, they are all still out there waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. And that someone could be you. Check your coins, really check them, examine every penny you encounter with the knowledge you have gained today. Because the next time you reach into a jar of old coins or receive change at a cash register or sort through a collection that belonged to someone you loved, you might just be holding $69 million in the palm of your hand without knowing it, until now. Thank you so much for staying with us today on The Coin Merchant. If this video opened your eyes to the extraordinary world hiding inside ordinary change, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another incredible story, and share this with someone you know who keeps a coin jar, because you might just be doing them the most valuable favor of their lives.